Okay, hi everyone. My
Just
name
gonna
is
wait.
Ken Inadomi. I am the chair of YANA, the Yale Alumni Nonprofit Alliance, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to today's program and to introduce our speaker, Jenna Matecki. We have over 200 viewers tuned in today, and this program really is a continuation of an ongoing global webinar series that's hosted by YANA to provide the very latest and most relevant content to social impact leaders, nonprofit leaders who are operating in the ever-expanding social purpose community of Yale. Let me also mention that YANA is a 100% volunteer-led organization, and we truly depend on the donations and the contributions of our members and followers. So if you derive any value from today's program, please consider making a contribution and becoming a paid member. It would go a long way in helping to support our work. Now let me introduce Jenna Matecki. Jenna is one of the unique and innovative voices operating in the brand marketing space today. In her talk, she will be describing exactly what is branding, why it's important, and how to do it. We're going to leave plenty of space and plenty of time at the end for Q&A. So thank you for joining us. And now, here's Jenna.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. We're going to wait one more minute while people sign in. We see the numbers are climbing here, and we just want to make sure that you'll be able to see the talk. In the meantime, I'm going to do something that might be a little bit clunky, and I'm going to start sharing my screen, and then I will switch over to the presentation. Thank you so much, Ken and Rachel and everyone that's over at YANA and everyone that's tuned in today. There was a brief survey that we sent out to a few people who were about to take this presentation today, and to see the responses and to learn about the incredible work that you're all up to, it's truly phenomenal. Your missions are noble and bold, and I'm really excited to talk to you today. So with that, I'm going to share my screen. All right. Okay, Rachel, are we good?
Yes, we are.
Okay, do you think we should start another minute? What do we think?
I think we're good.
Okay, I'm having trouble minimizing the screen right now.
Can you still see me?
I can, but I think everyone can see us looking at each other right now. Am I right?
No.
Okay, really?
I can only see you and the presentation.
All right.
Good, perfect.
All right, everyone, let's get started. This talk is called Telling the Truth in a Compelling Way. I'm going to focus primarily on branding and how branding works. It's going to be very fast-paced, so feel free to take a screenshot of the presentation or certain slides if you'd like to ask about them in the Q&A. We're going to aim for 20 minutes of a Q&A today so that I can get to all of your questions. Like Ken said, I'm an independent strategist and a writer. I focus on many things, and one of those is branding. Today, we're going to talk about branding. And in particular, we're going to talk about, there's going to be a slight focus on personal branding. So the examples that I'll give you will be, focused on personal branding. But what I tried to do in putting this together was to create a talk that spoke about branding in general, so that whether it's for your organization or a company that you're working with, or you, this should be helpful. And the steps that you're going to take here today are applicable in all those different situations. So another thing I'd love to talk about quickly before we get started is that I'm writing a book. I live nomadically in different places around the world for around 2 months at a time. And in each place, I write a series of short stories, and a local illustrator illustrates those stories. And then together, we send a postcard to anyone who signs up for one anywhere in the world. It's something that I'm very passionate about, and I spend a lot of time on it. So take a look at it, and I'll also include this link at the end of the talk. What is branding? Wow. Okay, so branding is a big word. And I think before we even dive in, I'd love to just kind of set a baseline for what we're talking about today. Branding is, facilitating some kind of reputation. A brand is the spirit of something. It's the personality of something. And the question that we should be asking is not, how do I brand this? Because that sounds like a really big, it just sounds like an endeavor, right? And it is, but let's kind of boil it down to what is the essence that we're talking about here? We're talking about human experience. The human experience of you or something that you're up to. So today, I'd love for you to just think about, branding is it's not this company with a brand, it's a group of people, it's an organization with a brand, right? Even if your company is thousands of people around the world, you still, that company is still a group of people ultimately, right? And so when we're creating brands, we're reflecting you, a group of people, an organization, and a thing, an event, a moment in time, all of the above. I hope none of the above because I thought about this, but let me know if you have any questions. Over the next 35 minutes, we're going to touch upon a lot of different things. We're going to talk about branding strategy and how it works. What does that mean? We're going to talk about good messaging. Ultimately, any plan has messaging involved. And even if you're doing something that's entirely visual, you're going to be describing that through messaging. We're going to talk about look and feel, the channels you're going to use. And then at the end, I promise you, I will answer questions that you have. And if you don't have time, you can just email me. Okay, branding. It all boils down to one thing. Who are you, really? You might feel a little uncomfortable as I ask you that question. Now, the brands that don't work are the ones that don't know who they are. A nice way of thinking about this, something that I always keep in mind, is who are you when you're sitting around a fire with people that you like? Are you the pyromaniac that's playing with the flames? Are you playing the guitar? Are you telling stories? Are you the person that got all the s'more supplies? This is who you are when you're outside of a work context. And yes, there's professional you and there's also you, but this person should be satisfied. So I like to think about it as who are you when you're sitting around a fire? If you haven't been around a fire in a very long time, congratulations, you have your weekend plans. Because I study this and, because ultimately branding focuses a lot on human psychology, these are some resources I recommend if you're struggling with this question. We all are at various points in our lives. On the left, you have the School of Life. You have the videos of Byron Katie, phenomenal. If you haven't checked her work out, you totally should. These are some books that I really like and oftentimes find myself recommending to people. So if you're looking at this, and even if you're familiar with some or you're familiar with all, take a screenshot. This is the first part of your homework. So why am I focusing a lot on this? Who are you? And I know we're getting really into some deep questions right away, but bear with me. Who are you? If you don't self-actualize, then every brand that you make, whether it's for yourself or for your team, is going to be like swayed by other people, right? I'm going to get exhausted. It's exhausting when doing this process and you realize that people have never asked themselves what they personally like or what are they into. So I think it's really important. Can't stress it enough. You're never going to have a full answer to who you are, but you should be thinking a lot about who you are and constantly trying to come up with new definitions of that over time. And I promise you that will definitely help with your personal brand as well as any team that you're working on. So we're out of who are you. Now let's move into the branding process. Every branding process starts with the same thing, asking a lot of questions and truly listening. If I'm working with a team of people, usually there's a pre-session survey that I send. If it's a smaller team, I'm writing it myself. If it's a large organization, there's a research firm or a research team within the company that's hired to write a survey and to survey people about various aspects of the brand. How do you describe the brand, et cetera, et cetera. We then have that survey. I take that survey as a branding strategist and I look through and I find some commonalities. This gives me a good baseline of where the brand is at, apart from anything that I can find online or any visuals that I've been given. So step one, ask lots of questions. Listen, take notes. So this means traditionally it's at least a 2-day long exercise to kick it off. And I talk to clients and I say, hey, I need your best decision makers in a room. These people need to be really excited about the brand. Sometimes there's actually a branding committee and we get all these people together in the room. So first, best people in the room. Best people in the room. Great team on the slide. Next, that room has to be really comfortable. So Ideally, it has a whiteboard so you can take notes in front of people. That's not a Google Doc, that's on a computer. This is a time when we're getting outside of our computers. So some whiteboard, comfortable room. I've even done this process in a cabin in the middle of the woods with a team before. So really, what's important about this is that it's a room, it's something that's outside of your day-to-day normal existence. I really encourage teams to not meet in their office because there's a lot of associations that you have with that office space. So get somewhere cozy. Then everyone takes a solemn oath to keep it relentlessly real. That means that we're going to be talking really honestly. If someone's coming into this meeting and they're going to talk to hear themselves talk, they're not welcome. This is really a time to be honest and to answer questions quickly and to really collaborate, right? The teams that work the best are the ones that are honest with each other. So this is a moment to keep it relentlessly real about where the brand's at, where you're at. Then, if I'm facilitating this meeting, I'm asking a bunch of questions. Those questions are everything from why do we need to exist to who are we serving? You know, how would we group the people that we're serving into smaller groups? These are just overall very broad questions about the brand. We keep it really broad. The reason why is that I want people to just kind of throw things out there. At this moment, I'm not mining words. This is not messaging yet. This is mining concepts. What's the concept? What are you really talking about? There's lots of talking. There's lots of pacing. At this moment, I know who's the fiddler, who's like ripping a paper to shreds in the corner of the room. And I remind everyone to keep in mind that words are shelters where feelings hide. When you use a word, you might have a certain definition of it. Someone else might have another definition of it, right? There's so much that is within a word, right? There's so much within the way that a word is delivered through tone and body language that words oftentimes lose their meaning. The best example of this is within politics today. So eventually your whiteboard starts to look like a complete mess. If I'm writing things on the whiteboard, I'm extracting certain ideas and there is a sense, there's an arrangement to them. But sometimes, you know, it's everywhere. At this point, I have like dry erase marker dust on my hands. You know, it's a lot. It's a lot on a board because a brand is a lot. And at this moment, it's time to start organizing our thoughts. So number one, ask lots of questions. If you're doing this for yourself, you can start this process in a notebook. Step two, develop a governing framework. What is a framework? This is a framework. Who, what, where, when, how, for, why. I'm convinced as a strategist that works as a branding strategist that every single strategy always boils down to these categories. Try it out. If you can define who, what, where, when, how, for, why for your brand, then you have so much already under your belt as you move forward. Now, there are people that say start with why in describing your brand. That's really great. That's part of messaging, and we'll get to that. Really, it's just having a good understanding of all the different, you know, like the 360 degrees of what you're trying to do and what you're trying to accomplish. So every framework boils down to these categories. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. Well, what about company values and personas and unique value proposition and our process? Well, that's all jargon. Words are shelters where feelings hide. And there's a lot of different ways to say the same thing. If in certain frameworks, I might start and say, this is how we're going to define our company values. This is how we're going to describe our people. And there's different frameworks that I'll walk into meetings with, yes. But ultimately, they all boil down to this. So in making this process really simple, this is where you should start. At this point, hours have gone by. Everyone's getting hungry. Mr. Client Yellow Box and I are ordering takeout. And we're really just kind of writing things on the board, erasing them, coming up with better ways to say it, prioritizing. What's the most important thing that we want people to know first about us? What's something that we can describe later when they ask us? This is a redacted whiteboard from a meeting that I had. Someone actually typed out the answers or typed out what was written on this whiteboard. And this is how messy it is. these ideas aren't prioritized yet. They're just kind of phrases that we wrote down. For this company in particular, the company was made up of 3 different pillars, let's call them. Customers, the people behind the brand, and then the products that they sell. This is a redacted framework, and this is a V1 of a framework that was later visualized. This framework was governing a large company's social impact strategy, their program. So every initiative, any dollar that they spent, it all had to fit somewhere within this framework. This is what everyone decided was important. And this is the strategy. This is how they answer the difficult questions. They go back to the framework and they say, okay, is this something that we're going to do? Yes or no? Does it fit into one of these categories? Yes or no? This is just a plea from me to you. Don't be fooled by fancy framework designs. I see so many Venn diagrams or complicated charts with nodes, you name it. Branding strategists like to brand themselves, and they'll come into a meeting and they'll say, this is the framework that will give you the great brand. And as I said before, a brand is a reputation, it's a spirit of something. There's a lot of different ways that you can arrive at it. So I'd encourage you to start with the framework that I just shared, which was who, what, where, when, how, for, why. I was in a meeting recently and talking to a client, and he said to me something to the effect of, hey, I always thought that there was this like secret brand bullet, but really it's just a bunch of people talking about something, coming up with a strategy, and then making cohesive decisions around that strategy and producing content that reflects that strategy. And I said, yes, that's exactly what it is. Step 3, drafting initial messaging. So there we go, a little bit glitchy. Every sentence, every word is an iceberg. I kind of cringe that I'm using the iceberg analogy right now, but because that's just very businessy. But really, you want to give people the tip of the iceberg. You don't want to describe the entire thing, right? It's not going to serve anyone if you hit me with a ton of language right away, or if you try and describe everything that you represent, everything that you care about right away. It's better to give categories and to hint at the tip, say this is the tip of the iceberg. It's up to you whether or not you want to go to the murky depths below and hang out with the orcas. I wanted to take a brand that we all know and love, and I've been seeing so many NASA t-shirts lately. And if people feel comfortable enough identifying themselves with this brand, I think it's cool enough to talk about here. This is NASA's core messaging. This is their famous meatball logo that was created, I think, sometime in the 50s. And they have another one, it's called the worm logo, that was created in the 1970s. But this is NASA. We know NASA. And I'm going to kind of show you what I see when I read messaging like this. NASA, acronym, America's Space Agency, pioneering the future in space exploration, scientific discovery, and aeronautics research. Okay, NASA, things are complicated. Americas, immediately I'm thinking governmental funding, space exploration, investigation of the unknown, pioneering, there's like cowboys involved, space cowboys, right? Like there's so many different ways that I can define each and every one of these words. Now my cousin, who's an engineer, would read this and he would think of different things because he's an engineer and he understands what aeronautics research is. I don't. The important thing to think about when you're looking at branding is that you want people messaging like this, you want people to take an action. And if I'm NASA, I want people to think that I'm pioneering the future and also to know the various things that we focus on. And these 3 categories are what they focus on. So I'm going to give you some quick rapid fire. If this wasn't already quick, this is going to continue to be quick. Rapid fire messaging suggestions. Again, every plan that you have, and even if you have visuals that you're doing and it's only a visual thing, it ultimately starts as words on paper. So when you're looking at these messaging tips, also think about them as branding tips in general. Number 1, there's a way to say what you do in a concise sentence. I know, I hear it all the time, but I do so many different things, and how can I describe it in a sentence? There's a way. You prioritize and you categorize the things that you do. When in doubt, try the rule of 3s. Sally is A, B, and C. She does A, B, and C. Keep it at a cadence And then you can cut it down when you're saying something that doesn't necessarily need to be there. Speak the truth. You're not the world's best cup of coffee unless at least 80% of the world thinks that you're the best cup of coffee. So yeah, that specific example is from a movie, but that really is true here. You need to speak the truth. People connect with humans. I want to know who you are. You are not the world's only puppy adoption agency, but you're a really good one. Tell me about it. Tell me what you do. Tell me what you care about. Speak the truth. Something else about written messaging only that's in an environment that doesn't have a lot of design or color schemes is that your reaction to what I write is how you're feeling that day and your definition of the words that I use. This is just a note to say, be careful with what you say, because you might not know how it's going to play with other people. This is, I'll talk about this when I talk about the importance of testing messaging, but really this is a very good rule to keep in mind. Anyone who's ever received a bad email knows this. Next, the best people embody who they are. So think about your mentors, people like Ken. When Ken walks into a meeting, he doesn't need to sell you on how cool he is. He just is really great. So this is just a note to say less is more. Don't spend so much time and words and energy trying to sell me on who you are. If you're truly great, you're just going to be great, and you're going to tell me the most important things first. Reflection versus forecasting. Past lives, career pivots, present and future. I get this question a lot. How do you brand yourself when you want to do something that's fundamentally different than what you've been doing up until now? I would recommend that you first talk about the present, and if you are gunning for something that's happening in the near future, you can speak from where you want to be at 3 to 6 months from now. The only additional rule that I have for that is that when you do speak from that place, you have to be confident you can sell that and execute that well. If you can't, take a break. These things take time, and down the road, whenever you achieve the thing you want to achieve, you can reflect that within your messaging. I can talk about this more in Q&A. Speak clear and direct, and then get fancy when it counts. Branding is not taking a dictionary and going through the dictionary and finding some obscure word and then using that word, whether it's the name of your company or the name of a product. There are certain naming strategies. We can talk about those later if you want to, but it's not taking, a word from the Middle Ages and then trying to incorporate it into you and defining it. If you do that, most often you're wasting precious time that you could have spent selling me in something else. Communication happens very quickly on the internet nowadays. I have less than 2 seconds to decide whether or not I want to stay on your website. So if it's written messaging, just say it clear and simple and let your designs speak for themselves, and don't get too caught up. Your messaging should drive towards an action taken. This is the difference between messaging and writing. Writing, I'm with you for the journey, right? Messaging has an agenda. This is why when I give you my business card, what I'm actually saying is contact me in some way or have someone you know contact me, right? Messaging has an agenda. So if I'm Birkenstock and I'm selling shoes and people are paying me to love the shoes that I sell and then talking about how much they love them everywhere, in whether that's in reviews or taking photos of a cute family all wearing Birkenstocks, then it's better for me to show pictures of that on my website and to show that within my branding, rather than try and say, no, really, the shoes are great in so many different ways. It's better to have other people speak for you sometimes, and we can get into this more later too. Your brand cannot live on its own. It's not something that is breathing, and you need to update it over time. At least double check your messaging every season and make small adjustments and tweaks towards for what words you're using. And I promise you that will help always make it feel fresh. You want to always love it. If your brand is community driven, then you want to also make sure that your messaging and kind of your overall strategy that's governing that messaging shows things that are happening in your community. So for instance, if I'm selling marketing face care beauty products to women that are in their early 20s. And one of them shows like a funny video of her dad putting on lotion, and that's doing really well in the community, then I want to be kind of bubbling that up to the surface as well. Don't be afraid to share what's important to you or what makes you different. If you are an engineer for NASA and you are the world's best juggler and you won the title for juggling, you can actually use that on your personal website. That gives me something to talk to you about in the next meeting. This is an example of various messaging activations that you'll see. Whatever it is, have a strategy for it. This is an example of a corporate bio. They all more or less look like this. There's a strategy for this. So whenever you're writing anything for your business or just in general, have a strategy for it before you start, and I guarantee you'll spend way less time on it and it won't be painful. Step 4, collect inspirations for the look, feel, and content that you want. So at this point, you've asked a lot of questions in a variety of different places. You have come up with a strategic framework for your brand. So how your brand's going to work, what's governing your brand and your decisions that you're making. Then you have your initial messaging. That initial initial messaging, water. That initial messaging is great, but it's totally incomplete without look and feel and design. So at this point, get out of words and into images and start realizing what you like. I would say that most people don't know how important look and feel is unless you work in a creative field. A picture truly is worth 1,000 words. Spend space that's on your website or in other activations of your brand for visuals and designs and photography. It's really, really, really important. It says so much about you. Those choices that you make can say things that are difficult concepts that you just like can't really put words to. Those visual ideas and those manifestations of your visual strategy can say what you can't put words to. I get asked this question a lot. Brand book. What should be in a brand book? Well, you have rules that govern your messaging, colors, type, logos, packaging design occasionally. That brand book is designed so that if someone new joins your team, you can give it to them and say, this is what our brand is, get to know it, and make decisions based on this. It's an evolving document as well. So first, collect inspirations for your look and feel. You don't have to make the decisions yet. You just need to know what you like and why. Remember the kind of who are you? You should know what you like. This Pinterest board taught me that my main interior design choice is plants everywhere, lots of plants. If you're designing a restaurant, this is your first step, is know what you like and then hire a professional to help you realize that and make it much better. Photography. Okay, photography. So your homework after this, if you do anything, get a really amazing photo of you taken. If you're trying to kind of go up a level in your career and you want to say to people that you're an executive and that you've got this, you can say that with a photo and it's going to look great. The best, most effective people in business, I truly believe, have wonderful photos taken of them. Teams, same thing. These photos on this slide work because they're naturally lit, they're environmental portraits. So the portraits themselves tell me more about the person. It's not just an awkward like yearbook photo, you know? Type. I'm using the typeface Optima in this presentation. Optima's bookish, it's clean, it's trustworthy. I chose it for a reason. The one, the typeface that's like the second up, the font that's the second from the bottom here is impact. Every internet meme that you see most likely is written in impact. So colors, logos. Your logo needs to work when it's small. Your logo, and that includes both your word mark and your logo mark, it needs to be readable, identifiable. These are all great logos. I tried to choose ones that were kind of from the nonprofit space or at least adjacent so that you could see You'll notice the new NASA logo from the 1970s is on the bottom right. These are all really great. My next plea, stop being so boring. Your LinkedIn photo can look nice. It doesn't need to look like an awkward photo, or worse, and I've seen this a lot, a photo of you wearing a suit at a wedding where it's like very clear that your arms are around other people, but then it was cropped in only on your head. You don't have to use something unless you really like it. And I don't know when people decided that the business world was going to be wearing shoulder pads and use only black and navy and gray. You can be a little creative. And if you're not visually minded yourself, then the only thing you need to do is come up with your list of inspirations, things that you like, know what you like. And there are various templates and other tools that can help you. And more importantly, work with people that you like, designers, visual people, creative directors that you like, and they will realize an amazing brand for you. And they'll know what you like because they have a board of inspirations. So develop and utilize the right channels. Okay, so at this point, you have asked lots of questions. You have your strategic framework. You have initial messaging. You had at least an inspiration board of what you like, and you understand why you like it. You might have, if you're already working with design teams and various visual creatives at this moment, you might have more fleshed out. But now is the time to understand where that brand will live. Where is your brand going to live? Given your industry, where does it have to live? We're going to talk about that now. So again, I should have just showed you this slide. This is what you need to do next. So again, know who you are and follow these steps. This is the non-jargony way of saying this. These are the things that you need to do next, okay? I believe that everyone should, unless they're truly on stealth mode, have a personal website. Now, if you're able to edit something online or even in person, your fashion choices, it should be something that you love. If you don't love it, why not? Don't have an old LinkedIn that's like 3 years old and you haven't updated it. I'm going to see it when I Google you before I get into a meeting with you, right? Same thing for a personal website, wording. You know, if you're listening to me right now and you're like, oh, yeah, there's a lot of stuff that I don't like, you know, that's okay. Where did you get stuck? What happened? What was the part where you're just like, I don't know how to move forward? Ask people for help with it. You can ask me for help with it. You can send an email. I will help you with it. You should love your personal brand, where it exists online, where your personal brand in person. You should like your fashion choices. There are many tools out there. I can talk about them more in Q&A. Squarespace, I use this for Squarespace for personal websites that I run, and it's great. The reason why it's great is that there's templates. There's lots of different template making sites out there. You can choose a variety of different ones if you want. I like Squarespace. I'm not a UX designer. I don't, you know, I work with web teams myself, but I'm not gifted in coding software. So Squarespace is really great for that. Social media. Okay. Everyone's like, do I have to do social media? And I say, no, you don't. You only have to be where your community is. If you're a puppy adoption agency, you need an Instagram and a Facebook. If you are a VC that is putting millions of dollars towards nonprofits, it's okay to be completely stealth and invest your time and energy in a personal website, or, and I think you need a personal website, but then, you know, be on the talking circuit and give talks in places. You don't need to post things on social media. Don't talk for the sake of talking. Social media is operative in two different ways: reflection and amplification of real life experiences that happen with your brand, the place where your community meets and talks. Your social is going to be more effective if it's where people go to find each other, not just you, not just to listen to you. Whatever it is, whatever you're posting, have a plan for what you're posting. Have a plan for your content mix. That means I post these 3 different types of photos and why, right? Don't continue something if it doesn't work. I've seen a lot of nonprofits in particular have like 9 or 10 different social channels, and it's just like a waste of resources, the time of your social media guru. It's not effective, right? Don't be afraid to kind of go back to square one and say, okay, we do X, Y, and Z. It makes sense for us to be on these platforms. Another way I like to think about social media is that every time you post something, you're basically saying, love me, please. And if you posted something, then you need to be okay with saying that, because that's really kind of what you're saying when you're posting something on social media. You want people to love whatever you're posting and give you attention. So it sounds kind of dystopia, but yeah, I think that that's a good way of thinking about it. Less is more. You don't need to talk for the sake of talking. Social media is incredibly useful when it brings people together. If it's not bringing people together, then reimagine it. Other notes, and these certainly could merit their own talks, but email lists. Email marketing is very, very in vogue. It's very hot lately. Everyone has an email list. Again, an email is a form of messaging. Be careful about email. I oftentimes see just the frequency is too high. I mean, how many times do you hit unsubscribe? I know I do that a lot, and I actually have now software that hits it for me. Experiences, experiential marketing. This is why Meow Wolf, Coachella, it's huge lately, because you're not, nowadays we kind of just like went back to the beginning, and now we're sick of our phones and want to go back to real life experiences. That is ultimately the way that you're going to facilitate stronger connections with your audience. And presenting well in person. Okay, personal branding. A lot of people think about this first, and I have it last for a reason. Personal branding, what they say, what you say, where you are, how you look. What they say. You're at a networking event, and it's a good one. A lot of people that you want to meet are there. You ask smart questions of others first. Why? Well, apart from just seeming like a person that's interested and curious about others, you will also learn about who you're talking to and how to speak to them in particular. They will also other people tell you who they are as well. So if this other person is gossiping about coworkers, or I don't know, just like not interesting to you for whatever reason, this helps you save time. Ask smart questions of others first. Oftentimes people are hired because they ask intelligent questions and they demonstrate how their mind works and how they think. What you say, practice your top line messaging, AKA your elevator pitch, AKA that sentence that I told you about in the beginning. That's really important to get down. Obviously, if it's written, you might speak it a little bit differently, but that top line messaging is really important to just own and love. What do you do? I do this, right? You say it quickly, well, probably much more slowly than how I've been talking this presentation, but you say it in a way that's compelling. And because you wrote that to be this kind of tip of the iceberg, people will then ask you about various things that you mentioned. Nonverbal communication is huge. I'm convinced that a lot of people that come across as not great really just don't know what they're communicating nonverbally. So that means keeping your arms crossed all the time, your chin slightly up. There's like subtle things that really make a difference. Nonverbal communication is huge. Tone, really important. Take a look at it. There's resources online. I can send you some as well. Where you are, place is huge, and we're not spending enough time with each other lately. So get out of your office and into the real world. Preferably that you find some niche community of things that you're interested in, people that are interested in the same things as you. This is also why in branding and personal branding in particular, you'll see place mentioned often. So for instance, I'm a New York based blank, or I'm a Berlin based blank. You know, companies oftentimes will say their locations within their branding in the first like 2 seconds, because they want to signal that they're part of a certain community, a certain city. Place matters. I'd also like to say that the environment that you're physically in matters. If I'm meeting with you at a Subway, that's a different experience than meeting with you at a really cute coffee shop in your neighborhood. So place matters. And if you're hearing this and you're saying, oh yeah, I sit at a cubicle and the fluorescent lighting's awful, there are ways to make it better. You can send me a note, or I can refer you to some interior design friends. It really makes a difference. Every memory that you have is associated with a place. And the place that you're in is also a part of you and your branding. Next, how you look, fashion, poses, style. So these two YouTubers on the right really helped me in those categories. I would recommend any of their videos. They're phenomenal. They know what they're talking about. Fashion says a lot about you. Your poses, they certainly says a lot about you, how you are in meeting, remember nonverbal communication. Also, how you look in photos. So there's ways to pose in photos. Now, if you identify as more masculine, I have recommendations for you as well. Send me a note. And before we go to Q&A, and I'm happy we're on time. I know this has been quick. I promise I'll answer your questions. A note, strength looks different now. When I think about a boss from the 70s and 80s, I think of someone very different than a boss today. And there's a Zora Neale Hurston quote that I really love. It's something, and I'm going to paraphrase this. This isn't the real quote, but it's like, you don't have it, you can't show it. And if you've got it, you can't hide it. And so that is just to say that you know it when you see it, when someone's powerful and when they're a true leader or when they're really good at what they do. And don't be discouraged if other people can't recognize your strength. They're probably not worth your time anyways. 3 last things. Number 1, you write your own future. You're responsible for you. You can create the life and the brand that you want. I have full confidence in that. It starts with knowing who you are. Do things in real life with real people. Get out of the office, get out of your phone, and meet people in real life. Those interactions are so much more meaningful and will get you further. Don't create a brand that doesn't reflect something that's actually real and happening in real life. It's not create a brand and then launch a product. It's kind of doing things simultaneously at the same time, right? Even if it's a super well-baked brand, you need to test that in the real world and then continue to refine it as you go. I've seen this happen, and it's not gonna serve you, because ultimately then you're branding a dream instead of something that's actually based in reality. And when in doubt, think about this North Star. You want to feel calm, kind, and confident. Anyone watching this talk, I guarantee, would want to exude that, right? What do you need to feel calm, kind, and confident all the time? Go get it. Thank you, and I'm available for questions.
Jenna, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so if folks want to, you can type in by Q&A or by chat. You can see your questions. Jenna, maybe I'll start. Do you have recommendations for smaller nonprofits that maybe don't have the resources to hire professional photographers or branders or websites, anything like that?
Yeah, absolutely. Everyone, there's going to be someone in your community that you know that takes a good photo, even if it's like your brother-in-law at a social gathering. Take those, if you have a board of references, like some kind of references that that you like, of like photography that you like, there are ways that you can mimic that. And there's someone that you know that is capable of taking a good photo, or better yet, looking at those references and then matching that.
Can you put your contact information back up on the screen? Someone just asked.
Yes, actually, I'm just going to say here. I'll type it in. All right. Just FYI, I see only the slides. Oh, sorry, you saw only the slides. Okay. I've also included the link to my book. I'd love for anyone to read it and sign up for a postcard. Where can I get the questions to help me develop our strategy? So first, you should start with a framework. So your first questions that you're answering are who, what, where, when, how, for, why. Those are your initial questions, kind of, right? Then you should all get together and start talking about what the brand is, and just have someone designated on your team as the question asker if you're not working with the brand strategist. That person who's the question asker should be as curious as humanly possible about all different aspects of your brand.
And there was another question about if you could elaborate a bit more on the for, who, and all those elements, but I think maybe just give some examples, particularly in the nonprofit sector.
Absolutely. So for is the people that you're serving. So who is, could often be like your internal team, or is who you're serving. So that's kind of like your target audience, so to speak. There's different ways to talk about those people. That there could be various groups of people within your target audience, right? But that's who you're serving with, your company, like the people that you are operating on behalf of. I'm impressed with your ability to live internationally. Where have you lived in the past year? So Berlin, I'm currently in Berlin right now. Tokyo, Mexico City, Buenos Aires, Barcelona. And then I've been doing stints back in New York and San Francisco working with clients, and also in Chicago. A lot of my family is based in Chicago. The way that that's possible is the internet. The fact that I work for myself, I'm a company of one, and then I'll scale up teams depending upon the project. It's really a dream. I'm super lucky that I'm able to do that. It's also operative of the kind of work that I do. What else? I can't see anyone else's chats. Yeah, I don't know if you can see anyone else's chats.
It depends. Sometimes people will send you one specifically. Right, here's an anonymous one. Can you see that?
Yeah, for organizations with board members and lots of opinions. Yeah, I know. Is there any advice for reaching consensus on branding? Okay, so I would say that you need to have the agency to make decisions. So when I was talking about kind of getting your best people around a table, ideally those are your decision makers. I know there's a lot of, I think people need to know what they can speak about, what they can't speak about. It's hard to speak to team politics without knowing a little bit more about it. But I think that there needs to be, the final decision maker needs to be designated on the branding. There needs to be a person that it ends at, right? The final word. And you can encourage everyone that this is an ongoing process. It doesn't ever truly end. So V1 doesn't have to be V2 or V3, et cetera. Also, I found that it helps to give people different pieces that they can own. What else? You're welcome, Brooke. Okay.
So we will have this video recorded, we'll distribute it, and then it lives on the YANA website in our YouTube channel. So you'll be able to watch this at any other time you wish. You can, if you missed some of the information or wanted to get the list of some of the books that Jenna recommended, we'll have that, all the information will be on there as well.
Absolutely. I can also kind of go through that once we're towards the end of the questions, and I can kind of slowly tick through the slides again as well.
That might be great. That might be great.
Awesome. How do I find a website developer? So, I think the question that you might be asking, let me know, Marilyn, if I'm right or wrong. You're looking for a way to have your website look great. If that's the case, then I'd recommend, depending on your budget, you can use a website template service like Squarespace. I really recommend Squarespace. I use them a lot. Or you can find a local web development agency. Sometimes they call themselves software development agencies, and they can help you develop something that's custom. Nowadays, there's so many great templates out there that I'd recommend taking a look at those first. Many websites are really just like an about page, a product page. Oftentimes there's like a parallax scroll where you're just kind of constantly scrolling. There's many templates that are out there, and they can help you save precious dollars or any other currency, insert currency here. Do you have advice for pulling a client away from focusing on what they want to say so they can focus on what their target audience wants to hear? Focusing on what they want. I think you need to present really good research. This is why it's really a luxury to work with clients that have budget for research teams. So I would show them research on your target audience. If you cannot conduct that research yourself, you can find a lot of research online about your target audiences. Usually, depends on what kind of communities you're serving. So I would show them research and say, this is tested. We need to talk and we need to think about these people. These people are ultimately more important than what we think, because we're trying to compel them to take a certain action, right? All right, contact information. Stephanie, don't worry. I will mention it all once we're getting it to the end of the Q&A. I'll hold up my contact information on the slide. So hang in there.
Have you used Wix.com?
Yeah, you know, Wix is like, they're on like an advertising roll. I hear good things. I haven't used them, but I've seen many of their websites and living out in the universe. So go for it. Templates are, even just spending the money with a designer and getting a nice template for a PowerPoint presentation, or a keynote, whatever, goes a long way. Google Slides, you name it. So I think, you know, if you're not visually minded, then recognize that and work with people that are, and a template is a great way to always make sure that what you're doing is in the right kind of, what you're messaging or what you're saying is in the right kind of visual environment. What else, guys?
Have you used WordPress? And actually I was thinking, have you used Upwork and Fiverr for things to try to help find a low cost branding website developer, those kind of projects?
Yeah, I think I don't use those websites. I don't know many people that have. I think the way to find good talent to work with you is to pull those references and then ask the people that are behind those references that you pulled who they used. Mm-hmm. I think that's much more effective than going on a website where, you know, and I haven't used these personally, so this may be just an assumption, but good design, good photography, it costs money. However, it really is worth your money to pay for it. And so if a website's promising, you know, a bunch of freelancers that are really, really cheap, I understand that you want to spend your money wisely. If you have a really good, you know, team photos and your website looks great, it can say so much for you. And it's so, I mean, I can't emphasize it enough. It's so important that your design and that your look and feel are exactly how you want it to be and more. So I wouldn't really recommend kind of a warehouse of freelancers. I would say even you can just ask people like, hey, did you like the designer that you worked with for your website? I thought your website was really great for your foundation. Like, how can I get something similar? What else? So we're looking at questions. So I'm looking at questions on my screen in both the Q&A and the Zoom webinar chat. You can feel free to put a question anywhere. What do you think about it? What do I think about what?
I think that was the Wix stuff.
Ah, yes. I mean, some of them look good, you know? I think the template only goes so far, and then it's how you fill it out. What does your content look like? Mm-hmm. Depends on the person who goes. Something else, like a point that I wanted to make during the presentation is that people are their own brands. So if I'm wearing a t-shirt that says Yale on it, I'm not only like repping Yale and telling more people about Yale, but I'm also signaling to you that I want to talk to you about Yale. So fashion is really important for personal branding, but you can also think about people as brands themselves. Your hobbies are kind of part of your brand. The time that you spend with your children is part of your brand. When you look at it in a big picture that way, you can start thinking about like these concepts that you're branding in a way that might make a little bit more sense. Can you share your slides? I can share my slides. Answered. Yes, the recording will be available online. Anything else?
I think maybe your idea to go back to some of those slides you had with the information on it so people can take another look.
This went by really, yeah, absolutely, I'm on it. This went by really quickly, guys. Desktop, share, okay, play. Don't worry, I'm doing this. Okay, so actually, this is the first one that I think that you might want. Let me just minimize the Q&A. You can see that, right, guys, the Q&A on there?
No, we can't. Or I can't.
Okay, good. So these are the Who Are You materials that I recommended. These are books. School of Life and Byron Katie are, books, not only books, but also videos. Really great resources for learning more about who you are. For the person that asked about questions, take a screenshot of this slide and start with those, okay? For the folks that asked about frameworks or kind of how to get started, this is the framework that I'm recommending with jargon words, I guess. Jargon. NASA. This is a good example of a corporate bio. I would take a screenshot of this as well if you're redoing your bio. Just keep this in mind. And you can enjoy my fake dummy text that I wrote there. Great photography. Next steps. These are 2 YouTubers that I recommend for fashion tips. And this is my contact information. And I'd also recommend that all of you sign up for a postcard. It's a really fun project.
Jenna, 2 more questions just popped up on the Q&A.
Yeah, can you read them to me, Rachel? Because I can't.
Sure. It says, do you have any advice about speaking about strengths and weaknesses in an interview without being overly stereotypical?
Yeah. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? I think if you go through the branding process, you're going to come up with lists of adjectives that describe you. And instead of just listing things, I would tell stories or give an example. So for instance, I'm really detail-oriented. I'm detail-oriented. I am the person that double checks everything on our team. Everyone comes to me about, questions about things and I answer them. I am meticulous. Before we do X, Y, and Z, I do X, Y, and Z, right? So tell a story about yourself to illustrate the strength or weakness. Oh, I guess, yeah, sometimes they ask you to say what your weaknesses are. So tell stories about that. We're storytelling animals. We're creatures that like to hear stories. So when in doubt, tell a story about a strength or weakness that you have.
Great. The next question is, someone wanted to know whether you were going to follow up with a few more points about the reflections and forecasting and the setting of a career pivot.
Yeah. So like I said, if you're looking at your top line messaging, right? And let's say that you're using the rule of 3s. I am blank and I do blank, blank, and blank. 2 out of 3 of those can be what you want to do in the future that you're confident that you know you can do and that you can sell. And then the 3rd can be something that you did in the past, right? Deprioritize what you did before that you don't want to do anymore and prioritize what you do want to do going forward. I usually encourage people to talk from the place that they want to be in 3 to 6 months from now. It is okay, for instance, if you are developing a new app that you're really excited about and you say, our customers say X, Y, and Z, but really you have maybe 2 or 3 customers because you just launched, right? It takes time to get to these places, but if your branding's clear, you can demonstrate kind of what you want to be, and you just have to back it up once they hire you to do it. If you have any specific questions, like more specific questions about that, feel free to give me another example or another kind of follow-up question. I can dive into it.
I think we have just another minute. So if anybody has any last questions, Jenna, or if there's anything you wanted to kind of wrap up with.
Yeah. You know, I think branding has become branded and branding is a big word. So just keep in mind that I've gone into meetings with really crazy looking frameworks, and I've also gone into meetings with who, what, where, when, how, for, and why. If you can just ask yourself these questions, be curious. Don't be afraid to ask for help on parts that you get tripped up with. If your people exist out there, the type of team that you want to work with exists out there, you write your own life, you create your own life. If you feel yourself getting stuck, change something about where you're at. And just know that you yourself are your brand, right? And I hope that gives you more confidence as you move forward, that sometimes, don't be afraid to know that you exhibit so much of what you can't say already. Who you are is speaking so loudly, sometimes I can't hear what you're saying. So don't get too bogged down with this stuff and just go out there in the real world and be you.
Excellent advice. Well, Jenna, thank you. And thank you to everyone for patching in. We will have a nicely cleaned up editing, so you just get the meat of the presentation in a video, and we will send that around and then have it posted. And as Jenna said, you can contact her directly with further questions or for a copy of her slide deck. So thank you to everyone. If anyone has any other further questions about or ideas about webinars, please let us know. There's lots of contact information on the YANA website. Again, if you like this work, please share it. Have everyone join YANA. And we look forward to our next webinar and seeing everybody back online and in person over the coming months. Take care, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Thanks so much.